Hey there, it's the Communication Doc, and this is video 5 in my series, How to Be Ready for Romance and Avoid a Broken Heart. So if you've listened to all my videos, which I strongly suggest you do, and you've followed all of my advice, you have first of all guarded your heart and taken your time. Secondly, you've taken some time to figure out who you are as a person and what you want out of life. Thirdly, you've figured out what you want in a relational partner. Fourthly, you've determined that you and your ideal relational partner, or the one you think might be for you in a relationship, are both mature enough that you will be able to sacrifice in the relationship, because that's the only way to make relationships work. And now we're coming to my fifth point, which has to do with making sure you're ready for commitment. Now, you might say, well, if I've done all those other things and I'm ready to have a relationship, well, then obviously I'm ready for commitment. Well, not necessarily, because sometimes we like the idea of being in a relationship, but we don't really want to be in a committed relationship, or we might have a fear of commitment. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to help people avoid that don't already have a broken heart, because that can be an effect. If you've had a broken heart in the past, you might have a fear of commitment, and you might have a hard time trusting that relational partner that you want to get into a committed relationship. However, you have to think about it this way. If you aren't in a committed relationship with someone, then at some point you or the other person or both of you are going to end up with a broken heart. And remember, that's what we're trying to avoid. So if you followed all of my steps of advice and you've reached the point now where you think you're ready, you need to say, okay, well, am I ready to be in a committed relationship? And if the answer is yes, then you have to ask that same thing about the other person. And it can be challenging, especially if you haven't created the habit of talking about your relationship. And I know that may sound strange, but there's actually a term called define the relationship, or a DTR talk, which means you have a talk with your relational partner about your relationship and where your relationship is. So where are we here? Are we friends? Are we friends that maybe have an interest in being more than friends? Are we ready to be in a serious, committed relationship? And if you don't actually talk about it, the chances are that you both may not be on the same page about what you want. So it's very important to have that talk and to make sure that you and the other person both understand the level of commitment and intimacy that you are striving for. Now, in addition to that, I want to caution you about physical contact. So if you're not ready to be in a committed relationship, you might want to minimize the amount or not have physical contact. Now, by that, I'm not saying, a hug when you're greeting or leaving, but I mean other kinds of romantic physical contact. And the reason is that we as women generally perceive physical contact as being a sign of commitment, whereas men don't necessarily do that. Now, I'm not saying that men are only in relationships for sex. That's not what I'm saying. And in fact, studies show that men and women both want to be in romantic relationships for the companionship and for that sense of intimacy. However, men tend to perceive touch more as a boost to their self-esteem. So physical touch boosts their self-esteem, whereas for us as women, physical touch is generally associated more with trust, and trust is associated more with commitment. So you might want to be careful about that, and again, add that into your define the relationship talk, because you don't want to assume that because you're holding hands or even kissing that now you are in a committed relationship when he may not perceive it the same way. So be careful about that as well. This point again is to make sure that you and the other person are both ready for commitment and for the same level of commitment. And I have one more in this series that I'm going to talk about, as far as now that you've achieved a committed romantic relationship, what are some things you can do to help maintain and keep developing the level of intimacy? So until next time, I'm the Communication Doc, and let's get communication healthy.